Hello, and welcome to another edition of Academic Matters. I'm Joe Marbach, the Provost at LaSalle University. In this segment, my guest is Dr. Lisa Jarvinen, an Assistant Professor in the Department of History. Lisa, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Now, Lisa, I guess congratulations are in order. You're recently tenured and soon to be promoted to Associate Professor, so
that's right.
that's great. For the viewers at home, could you tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to LaSalle and what you're working on?
Sure. I have a bit of an unconventional background for a historian because my first degree was in French and American literature at the University of Michigan. I then went on to do cinema studies at New York University, but I decided that I was more interested in the history of the film industry. So I switched to doing a doctorate in American history, but I did write about the history of the film industry. And at that point, I was on the job market, started applying for jobs. I did have more than one possibility. I didn't have to come to LaSalle, but I chose to. Certainly for the location in Philadelphia. Also for the nature of the school, the fact that it was a mission-driven school was another reason, why I chose LaSalle. So, and then I got here in the fall of 2007.
Okay. Now, your work and your research is really varied. You mentioned you do some film studies, and
sure.
Some of it has to do with, is it Mexican films, Latin American films? Do you do a
my doctoral research and the book that I published about that was about the moment when the film industry went from being silent to having sound. And once you introduce sound, there's the problem of language. How do you sell films to people in audiences who speak different languages, who don't, for instance, understand English, which would have been the language of most Hollywood films. So you have a problem of translation. And what I was writing about was also, though, how this gives an opportunity to other film industries to take advantage of that they, audiences that have large numbers of speakers, such as Spanish, suddenly you can make films specifically for that audience, and it's a way to compete with Hollywood that really hadn't been available to other industries prior to that transition from silent to sound.
Okay, and was it is a particular time frame then I guess you're working in?
Sure, sound comes in the late 1920s, and the transition years are roughly from the late 20s through the early 30s. As they're kind of working out, like, well, how do we deal with this? Do we subtitle? Do we dub? Do we make films directly in that other language? Do we do co-productions? And they, the Hollywood studios and other industries try a combination of all of those things. But you do start to see the rise of Spanish-speaking film industries in Mexico, in Spain, in Argentina. They don't compete on the level of Hollywood, and yet they're much more successful than they had been during the silent period.
Okay. In addition to that, you're doing some work on public history, and you've become a bit of the local expert on Philadelphia public history? Or is that a stretch?
Expert's a big word, but yeah, our department started, I think in 2008, we started the conversation and then actually introduced the program in 2009, that we decided that in addition to our academic MA in history, we would add a track in public history, which is not just the study of, but the presentation of history and the practice of history outside of the academy. And that seemed to fit really well with a sort of, again, a LaSallian ideal of that, that it's useful knowledge, that has practical application. But what it means is that students are preparing to work at museums, at historic sites, in archives. Again, it's still about the practice of history, but not for research and teaching in an academic setting. And I had done some museum work, so that was one reason why I got involved in the program. Okay. But then we also decided that they really needed to have some background in the history of the city, because most people were likely to be looking for jobs and places where they would work around here, and so that was a necessary component. And so I either volunteered or was drafted to teach that class. I can't remember which. And it was a very forced march through learning the history of Philadelphia, but it was great. I mean, it's really been one of the best things that I've done as far as teaching, as far as like really acquiring a new set of ideas and knowledge about the local history.
Tell me about the students in that program. You kind of alluded to some of them. Is there a prototypical student? Are they coming from all backgrounds with different goals?
We get a few who come straight through our 5-year program, so they're doing their undergraduate major in history, and then they decide to use our 5-year program to get an MA in addition to that. So, I mean, that's where some of them come from. But public history has attracted a broader array of students than than we might have had otherwise in our master's program. Some are professionals already, some are already working in public history related fields, and some are people who want to transition into that. They might be working already, but they are looking to do something that they would find more satisfying, because most people choose that because they're really strongly committed to it. You know, they feel very passionate about following that.
So would the traditional history student in the graduate program would have been a high school teacher looking to get the master's degree and kind of study history, not necessarily not apply history? Or
yeah, I mean, you know, a lot of our students in the master's program are high school history teachers, many of them in Catholic schools, not all of them. We have had a few of those also decide that they were interested in public history as well, so we've had a little bit of crossover, but yeah, the public history opens it up. And I think the other typical student for the master's program in general are students who then, you know, want to go on to do a doctorate somewhere else. And so that, you know, they start with an MA here and then they feel better prepared to apply for doctoral programs. So, you know, we serve a fairly broad range of students at that level.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about the undergraduate students you're serving and working with. What types of courses have you been teaching there?
Sure. 3 main areas. I teach core classes, so the required courses of all undergraduates at LaSalle, and for that I teach a survey of American history and a survey of world history from 1500 to the present. And so that's where I see you know, students from from any major, from any school, and so you really get to know a lot of different people. Also at that level I teach for the English Language Institute, and so this year I've done 2 sections of core classes, core history classes for international students who are in this Pathways program, which is a transition, as you know, of course, that transitional program, so that they can start taking classes in the regular curriculum in their second year, but in the first year that maybe they need a little more support. So those are my core classes. I teach some upper level undergraduate history classes, history of Latin America and history of Philadelphia also. And then I teach for the American Studies program, and generally I teach the capstone seminar, the 400 level seminar in that program.
Okay. Let me go back, and you mentioned the Pathways program, which for viewers at home that wouldn't be familiar, that's a program that we offer, as you said, to international students whose English isn't quite strong enough to get them into the regular admission process, and so they're learning English as a second language and developing those skills, but they're pretty close, right? And so you're dealing with a group of international students who are also in that transition phase.
Right.
What kind of challenges do they present to you?
Well, that's interesting, because I mean, this year was the first year, again, as you know, that excuse me, that LaSalle's doing that program. So we didn't quite know what to expect, and how we sequenced it was we did the American History survey in the fall semester and then the World History survey in the second semester. And there were a lot of challenges with that, because typically first year students at LaSalle who are going to go into the American History survey, they have a pretty good background from high school, but with the international students, some of them, they really knew next to nothing of American history. And there's great opportunities with that because it's fresh. You know, I mean, like you're telling stories about, you know, Lincoln or Franklin Roosevelt that they're hearing for the very first time. And that's generally not the case when I normally teach that class. But I do think that they found it very challenging for that reason, and that global histories maybe put us a little bit more on an even playing field. And also in the fact that some of them know the history of their own countries obviously much better than perhaps I do, or that they know it in a different way. They have a very different experience of it, a much more meaningful experience of it than I do. And so it's been fun this semester.
So which countries were these, a range of some of the countries that the students were from?
We have, it's a small group that I have, but I think represented we have China, Vietnam, Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, Puerto Rico.
Okay.
I hope I'm not missing anybody.
So it's a different, it's a pretty wide-ranging group, and you can really, you can literally use them as the experts in the class.
Yeah, and things I take for granted that assumptions that I just that American students are likely to have, they don't necessarily have. So and that's actually it can be very pleasant, to be forced to rethink it, and not rely on their sort of internalized narrative of American history. Okay. So.
Well, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, you're well on your way in your career. What's the next phase? Often getting tenure and getting promoted is one level, and then it's kind of what are the next challenges. So where's your research agenda taking you?
In some interesting directions that I hadn't expected a few years ago. So I am working on a project that's actually about the history of the Christian Brothers, which I'm sure that were I not working at LaSalle School, I would probably not be doing. And that partly came about, well, it's a bit of a long story, and so I'll try and keep it very brief. But on campus, I'm sure you know Brother Miguel Campos, who is assistant to the president. I'm not sure what his...
Brother Miguel works in the Office of
Mission
and Mission Integration, so yeah, in the president's office.
Right. Well, I and Conrad Gleber, who is the director of the digital arts program here, we both had research interests in Cuba, and we were trying to think about ways to make some connections, like how could we foment more programs about Cuba here at LaSalle. And I ran into Brother Joe Gravenstein, the university archivist, and he's like, well, you should go talk to Brother Miguel, who's Cuban, of course. And I hadn't realized that. I mean, I did know Brother Miguel. I did not know he was Cuban. And when we really realized like what his story was and what had happened to the Christian Brothers who had been in Cuba prior to the revolution, and with the Cuban Revolution of 1959, their schools were nationalized and they had to go into exile.
Okay.
And we suddenly realized, like, this is a really dramatic story and a very relevant story, given the transitions that Cuba is going through, given some of the interests of the LaSalle order in education and in social justice, and sort of using interviews with Christian Brothers who experienced those events to kind of get at some of those historical questions. Yeah. So that's one program. I mean, that's one project.
Is it looking to be a monograph or a book?
No, we're thinking more of perhaps doing that as a digital media piece so that it will be more accessible. As oral history, which those interviews would be deposited at the library, but then also, perhaps producing something fairly short from that, that would give people a sense of, again, the history of Cuba, the history of the brothers, the kind of the diaspora, all those different aspects of that experience that I think are unknown to most people.
Yeah, and haven't been categorized. I'm going to ask you about more, Lisa, but we're just about out of time.
Yes.
So I do appreciate your coming on the program and telling us a little bit about what you've been doing and the students you've been working with.
All right.
And look forward to perhaps getting you back again so we can go into the rest of your research agenda.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. My guest has been Lisa Jarvinen, who is an assistant professor in the Department of History here at LaSalle University. Please join us in the next segment when I'll be joined by Jordan Copeland, who is an assistant professor in the religion department.
Lieutenant Colonel Nicole Malachowski, a U.S. Air Force Fighter Squadron Commander and the first woman pilot with the United States Air Force Aerial Demonstration Team. My fellow airmen and I know that each of us plays a huge part in our victories, whether in the air or on the ground. We couldn't accomplish our mission without using everyone's skills to reach our goals. Embracing our differences and working together is also what has made America strong. Thank you for your support, and remember, our strength lies in our diversity. This message brought to you by the United States Air Force.
For others, it may have just been a summer job. But for me, it was training. Now I'm an Air Force pararescueman, and my job is to save lives. Make the right choices today, and be ready for the challenges tomorrow. This message is brought to you by the U.S. Air Force.
Being a gold medalist skier requires a lot of hard work, intense training, and time outside on the mountain. But taking care of my skin is easy and doesn't affect my performance. Every day I apply sunscreen and wear protective gear. I know protecting my skin will help prevent skin cancer and avoid wrinkles. I get my skin checked regularly by a dermatologist. 1 in 5 Americans will develop some form of skin cancer in their lifetime. My name is Julia Mancuso and I'm wearing orange to help put a spotlight on skin cancer.
Welcome back to Academic Matters. Once again, I'm Joe Marbach, the Provost at LaSalle University. In this segment, I'm joined by Dr. Jordan Copeland, who's an assistant professor in the Department of Religion. Jordan, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
And like Lisa, the previous guest, congratulations are also in order. You were recently voted for tenure by the board and will be promoted to associate professor, so congratulations.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Jordan, for the folks at home who don't know anything about you, tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up here at LaSalle.
Sure. I grew up in Minnesota, so ended up going through school there and then ended up doing a religion and philosophy degree out at Northwest University in Seattle. And that led me to a religion program at the University of Iowa. My school for an undergrad was a small liberal arts school, and I wanted to go to a public university for graduate school and ended up there and did a PhD in religion and went on the market and found a happy home here.
Oh, great.
Yep.
Now, the areas that your religion is such a broad area.
Absolutely.
So you focus on ethics in particular, and I know you do some work with our folks in the biology and science departments on ethics. And is there a course of playing God or something along that line?
I've done a course with Dr. Samuowitz from biology called Playing God. We offered it twice, and it's gone through different maneuvers in his teaching and my own. We don't offer the class as a joint class anymore, but I continue to work with them informally and having the conversations with them that started in that class. And certainly I've influenced my classes on bioethics for honors and some of my contemporary moral issues classes as well. But definitely, I mean, one of the things that I found attractive about LaSalle and drew me to religion is that sort of broadness of religion, but the interdisciplinary nature of religion and how much it was welcomed here at LaSalle. So I think that's been a nice match.
Yeah, how did the students react when suddenly, and was this originally a science course? And then
well, we developed the course, so
Okay.
it had never been offered before. We were approached by Margie Allen from integrative studies to do this course. We developed it together and offered it twice. Prior to that time, I don't know that there was a class like it offered in biology. In fact, I think 4 credits students took it for, for either religion or for integrative studies.
Okay.
Not for biology credit, but that was something we had considered, changing if we offered the course down the road. So,
Okay.
yeah.
What are some of the other courses you've taught for the students?
Well, like Lisa, I teach in the core as well. Religion offers 2 core courses, one on exploring religion, which is a general sort of phenomenology course. It's not a world religions course per se, but looks at some of the categories for studying religion, ritual and different beliefs and so on. Rather than trying to capture all of the religions in a 15-week course, we look at some of the framework for considering religion. The other is exploring Christianity, and I've taught both of those, but for the last several semesters I have focused on exploring religion, which has been a really interesting change, challenging in its own way, as was exploring Christianity. Contemporary moral issues, if I had to have a non-core course with which I'm sort of most directly associated, it would be contemporary moral issues, which I offer at least twice a year, and have developed courses on evil, which is the newest course I teach on exploring and encountering evil, looking at the theological, philosophical, and scientific sort of explanations for evil or justifications, traditional problems, a whole range, and that's been interesting, very interesting.
Yeah, it sounds like the type of thing that folks, I think, intuitively know what evil is, but there must also be a relative component or a cultural element of defining evil or identifying what is evil.
Absolutely, and part of how we address that is, evil it's a robust moral and religious category, and so when we have I don't want to say more relativistic, but it's certainly a more fluid sense of morality, some of that language can lose its currency, and part of what we try to approach it as is almost an aesthetic category. That is, it of course has its moral content, can have its theological content, but it is hard to pin down and define. And in that regard, it's a category or a word that can convey something that sometimes we can't capture with other words, right? So to consider the Holocaust bad just intuitively doesn't seem enough. Evil seems a lot more appropriate, but what do we mean by that? In the same way, standing before a Picasso, good doesn't maybe seem enough, but it's the aesthetic language that I think is very often similar to moral language, where it means something, but we have to go and do the busy work and difficult work of articulating what that is.
Okay. Do students get that, or is there
Yeah,
period?
you know, it certainly is. It was a great class in terms of student participation, and students definitely found it challenging, but rewarding. Which, in my mind, that combination is always what I'm striving for. Right? I don't want them to find the class to be too easy, so I'm always looking for those comments that say this was a hard class, but an interesting class, or challenging in a good way. Okay. And I think students, you know, it was difficult material, and I think the students really were up to the challenge. And I've found that to be the case every time I've sort of amped up a class a bit and sort of ignored the idea of not offering or assigning primary text, or students don't read this or they don't do that. Is generally when I ramp it up but provide a safety net, so to speak, or give them the time to work through it. I've always been rewarded by their response to it. So yeah, difficult topic for a lot of reasons. Great. But they did great.
Good, I'm glad to hear that. Another aspect is that you encourage faculty, you know, as they're doing their research or various scholarship, to incorporate that in the classroom. First, let me ask you that first part about what you've been working on, where it's taking you, and then maybe we can circle back to how that informs your teaching.
Absolutely. As I mentioned, one of the things that I found so attractive about doing a PhD in religion, and one of the reasons that I went in that direction rather than, say, philosophy, and not that this isn't true of philosophy as well, but my perception of religion as an academic discipline was that it was very interdisciplinary. So my academic work has sort of, for better and worse, or worse, represented that. So my current work that I'm doing is on punk and subcultures, using some of the theoretical categories of Alistair McIntyre, Nietzsche, and trying to find traction for these theories in a rather grounded movement, which is of specific interest to me. So that's, in terms of the subject matter right now, it is on looking at the history and tradition of punk and trying to actually characterize it as such, to look at it as a tradition, and what that might mean in terms of evaluation, participation, and so on. And that's in line with some of my other research that has been done on music, but also on science fiction, and work on Facebook was, I think, the first article I published was looking at Aristotle's philosophy of friendship and applying it to this new social media. And I think that sums up sort of how I approach my work, again, for better or for worse, is trying to find traction for theory in these elements of popular culture and identifying those intersections.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, didn't you do a course on Harry Potter?
No, I didn't do a course on Harry Potter. No, I didn't.
No, okay.
Though evil could be, the class could be titled Defense Against the Dark Arts.
Maybe somebody suggested you should teach the course on Harry Potter.
No, I think that's in philosophy, Joel Garver.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So applying then this kind of philosophical basis to current culture, is that something that students get right away, or do you have to kind of go back and?
Well, I think one of the wonderful things about it is it's a terrific entry into that dialogue. I don't think it's necessarily, if I say, here is Fugazi or the Rones, this punk band, and here's Alistair McIntyre, do with it what you will. But if I can point out in some way, and not that it's I do it on my own or that it's necessary, but legitimate some of their own experiences by saying, look, theory gains traction by being a way to explain our experiences. And so it might not be punk for them, but I incorporate music, other forms of music in the classroom, sometimes treat them as texts in their own right. And I find not that they're always that their interests are the same as mine, but at least it's an avenue for moving into the theory, right? So that they might not get Nietzsche right off the bat, as rightfully so. But if we can tie that to something, or whatever the case might be, in the evil class, we looked at death metal from Scandinavia, all right, for imagery and symbolism and so on, and several students, found that pretty compelling. So
that's great.
Yeah.
What's the future direction?
Well, I'm continuing to do a conference in Prague every year on urban subcultures and pop cultures, and that's taking a lot of my time, which I'm happy to give. So developing that further, we're trying to develop a journal in relationship to it. I've got a book that I'm editing right now that's related to a conference that is sort of a sister or brother conference to that at Oxford. So a lot of it is catching up on some of the editing I'm doing and then really trying to promote some of the ideas of others that are being presented at these conferences and giving them an avenue and sort of a venue for presenting these ideas.
Would you categorize this as an emerging field or subfield?
Well, in Europe more so than here, in terms of there just is a lot more interdisciplinary work. And I'll admit that it's partially a response in my own right and some of colleagues in terms of how academics have been done for a very, very long time. Large conferences, the same people getting up and talking for 45 minutes, which has its value, but we sort of wanted to craft something where it could be truly interdisciplinary. We have anthropologists, music theorists, people doing some very interesting work in other areas. We bring them together, everyone at the conference presents. Publication, a condition of publication is your participation in the entirety of the conference.
Okay.
So it builds a community.
And how large is the conference?
We will scale it down to approximately 35 people.
Okay.
From about 200 abstracts that will come in. Those people will all be a participant. It's not a guarantee of a hard book publication for them, but any smaller publications of the meeting. Right,
Okay.
If they've participated, they can be involved with that.
Okay, and that's every other year you're involved?
That's every year.
Every year?
Yep,
Okay.
every year. Usually in March, but this year in May.
Okay.
So.
Well, great, Jordan. It's been fascinating talking to you.
Well,
We're just about out
well,
of time.
thank you.
Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
it.
My guest has been Dr. Jordan Copeland, Assistant Professor in the Department of Religion here at LaSalle University. Once again, I'm Joe Marbach, Provost at the aforementioned university. Thanks for watching.